guys, and welcome to the latest edition of Train with Honour TV, where today I've got a fantastic guest for you. He's a really experienced S&C coach. It is Mr. Alex Ryan. Alex, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. It's absolutely brilliant to have you on the show. And I'm really excited to share the journey that you've been on, which has been a pretty roller coaster, really, hasn't it, the last sort of couple of years. So just for the guys that are watching the program, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a strength conditioning coach. I'm accredited through the UK Strength Conditioning Association, which I can thoroughly recommend if anybody's interested in going down that route. I'm currently living in Germany. I've been here for a year now, and I'm working with Eintracht Frankfurt.
Sounds really good, that. So what exactly is your role at Eintracht then? Because I know obviously you're doing a lot of work one-to-one with the athletes. I mean, is it predominantly the one-to-one element you're looking at the minute, or is it more like the team element?
Again, I've got a bit of a weird contract with the Eintracht, so I'm in a dual role. So I am head coach of their rugby department. So they're a bit like in like Spain, where Real Madrid have also got a basketball team. Similar kind of situation here. So Eintracht Frankfurt is a sporting club, a sporting environment, and they've got multiple different sports associated with it. So I'm the head coach of the rugby, and I'm also the head coach of their under-18 decathlon for the track and field. So I've been working with that, and I've also had the opportunity to work with some academy football players, not just with Eintracht. So there's one Eintracht striker I'm working with a lot at the moment, but also with a striker from Mainz as well.
Wow, that's pretty broad, that. This is one thing that's happening a lot, isn't it, with clubs, is they seem to be going, I mean, you look at Real Madrid, prime example, and the first thing you think of is football. But then you look, but then when you really look into it, what a lot of people don't think about is clubs are a brand. Clubs are a brand, and people don't think about how they can grow the brand. So of course, going into football, going into rugby, it opens so many doors. I mean, what sort of benefits have you found so far working in the coaching department, from obviously in the rugby element of a professional football club?
It's a crazy environment, because you've got, rugby isn't a huge sport over here. It is growing. I mean, the Rugby World Cup was viewed by more people in Germany than loads of other countries. It's really growing over here, but it is on the first kind of steps to that process. It is completely, football is their number one sport. We're supported and we're held up by that club. It's pretty interesting, because you've got people that are doing this from the football, where it's full-time and everyone's a professional coach, and then you get to the rugby and it's people are doing it in their spare time. So that's probably quite a big difference. I'm the only person that really has the time to put a lot of energy into it, which is quite interesting, because you don't have as many people to lean on as you would do in the professional environment. But it's, as a strength conditioning coach, to come in as the head coach and now have to add the tactical and technical element to it, that's been probably one of my biggest learning curves this year. So
I can imagine, because it's one hell of an achievement, being, working for such a big club. Because obviously you've moved up. I mean, obviously we've known each other a couple of years now, and obviously you moved over there last year, and to go into such a role in a foreign country. I mean, how have you found the transition in terms of? I mean, is there any language barriers or anything over there, or?
I mean, got to be completely honest. I have dipped my toe into the water of learning German. I was at a language school. Corona kind of messed that up a bit, due to it messing up everything at the moment. But it's yeah, I can get by in basic level. What I have found is, with the younger athletes, you really have to come forth and you have to at least try. If I only spoke English, these guys aren't willing to really make an effort to really come forward. The younger athletes at the decathlon, with the track and field, they're under 18. So the age ranges from the youngest being 14, the oldest being around 17. So it really is, their English is very good, but you've got to show some willing to get them out of their shell in the first place.
It's getting that no-like trust,
that was a bit of yeah, that's it. You've got to earn their trust. You're there, think, well, this coach coming over from the UK, it's fine, but he's got to make an effort. So you've got to show that. The rugby was slightly easier with it. I would say about 30% of the guys playing rugby have got into the sport because they either did a semester in an English-speaking country, hence why they got into playing rugby in the first place, or one of their parents is a native English speaker, also why they played rugby in the first place. If one of their parents is English or Australian, you know, they've just been introduced to rugby at a younger age or at all. So they speak English. So the rugby club's slightly different.
You could say that I think I'm going to sound like a bit of a snob now, but they always say rugby is a gentleman's sport, don't they? And it's a more mature sport than the football. Now, I'm not saying that football is a sport for ruffians or anything like that, but when you look at rugby, you know, there's a lot more discipline in the sport, isn't there? Because, of course, you've got to think about your timing of your tackles. You've got to think about, you know, your decision-making of that, I suppose. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of elements that, I mean, it comes into that chaos sport at the end of the day. Like football, there's 30 guys plus a referee on a rugby pitch. There's a lot of decisions that are out of your hands. There's only very few decisions that you can make. It's a whole open game. It's a chaos environment. It's what makes it fun for me, what makes it fun to coach. But in terms of the respect thing, the referee, without him, there's no game.
100%.
And there's a lot more respect shown to the referee on a rugby pitch. It's something that I think that football could learn from rugby in that respect. I mean, I think they've got better recently when they've given referees the ability to yellow card players for bad language directed at them. I mean, I'm still not sure if that's ever going to be the same as a rugby pitch, but it's different. It's a different sport.
I think it's the rules and regulations, isn't it? Really, because there's, regardless what sport it is, people are always going to be a bit biased towards their own teammates and everything like that, isn't it? And it is one of those. But I think in rugby, it's from my experiences anyway. It's instilled with you from the day dot, isn't it? It's always because you're given the reasoning behind why it's important to be disciplined, and it's a bit like being in the military. Because it's, you know, there's always a reason behind it. Whereas football, it's a case of you go on the pitch, you do your business, you go and or usually you go and have a beer afterwards in the bar, don't you? Afterwards, whereas rugby, it's handshake before, handshake during, handshake after. So yeah,
yeah, there's an element to that. I mean, I don't know how much of that is to do with the fact that as kids we all go out, we kick a football around with our mates. There's never a referee. There's never any rules. It's just whatever happens to be the rules on the day. You can't play rugby in that term. Rugby is only conducted in a school environment or in a club environment. You don't, even in the UK where it's a popular sport, with a group of friends, you go out and kick a football because you can kick a football with 3 people where you can't really play a rugby game with 3 people as much as. So maybe that has something to do with it, whereas there's always some level of rules, or with football, there's no rules. You can go play heads and volleys, you can do whatever. There's, you know, it's a different game.
I suppose it's down to the history. I suppose it's down to the culture, isn't it? It's definitely a culture thing and the environment thing and everything like that. But I suppose another reason why rugby's probably not played as much in schools nowadays is because of the physical element, and because of course kids being kids, they'll watch the game, they'll see someone like Owen Farrell going in for a crunch tackle, and then the first thing they're going to want to do on Monday morning is, right, I've seen Owen Farrell do that. Yeah. Here you go, little Joey, bang, and then the next thing you know, that's it.
It is a contact sport. These things do happen, but it's no different to football. There's in that respect, you can hurt yourself playing football. It's just one of those things. If you're going to play a contact sport, you've got to be educated behind it, haven't you? Really, in the discipline. So, talk us, Alex, about your journey into coaching. What sort of started you off? I mean, tell us a bit about your career as an athlete before you got into coaching. I was introduced to a lot of different sports at a very young age. My dad was a professional cricketer. He played for Stalybridge Celtic, and I was always offered the opportunity to play sport. As a kid, I used to swim, used to play cricket, used to play rugby. I found football at a later age. my dad was raised in South Africa, so their main two were rugby and cricket. So that's what I was introduced to first. And then a little bit later, I got introduced to Latin American dancing, where I did it for fun. It was something my older brother did, and I got into it from there because I was there anyway. I was given the opportunity. Any kind of sport, I just wanted to play at a young age. Turns out that I had a bit of a natural talent for it, and within a couple of years, got to a decision where it was, because it's such an early specialization sport, like you can play rugby and cricket and do swimming all the way up until you're 15 or potentially turning semi-professional, professional, before you have to make a decision to drop something. I was 8, 9 years old, and it was, if you really want to have a go at this dancing thing, then everything else has to stop, because you've got to get into it. It's just like gymnastics. It's that whole early specialization. So I got into doing that, and I was soon representing Team GB from a young age, and it's a really tough environment. It's cutthroat, it's hard work. From 8, 9, 10 years old, you're training 10 hours a week, which is intense for a young kid. But I've got to be honest, it was never my favorite sport. But I'm a truly, truly competitive human being, and I had the opportunity to do Latin American dancing and represent my country, or I could play rugby and play for a local team, or I could play football and barely get into the local team. So for me, the decision was easy. It was, I want to compete at any sport at the highest level I possibly can do. So I chose the dancing. It was hard work, but I'd learned a lot from it, discipline-wise. But then I got to be honest, a couple of things. I was fed up. It's quite political at times. It's not like a 100-meter sprint race. If you're a 100-meter sprinter, if you cross that line first, you win. Dancing isn't like that. It's a bit like the figure skating. People are judging you, and what other people like, other people don't like. So there's a lot of
that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's some political decisions that come at times. I got a bit annoyed at that, and I also was a typical case of burnout. Too early into too much specialization, and got to 14, 15, and just kind of threw my toys out the pram for if I'm going to be completely honest, and I just had a bit of a rebellion for a couple of years and decided I don't want to do that anymore.
It's a natural thing, isn't it? When you've done it for so long and it's your discipline and you've given so much time to it, it's a natural thing, isn't it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the age of 7, 8 years old, you're treated like a professional athlete. There's no just if you're not enjoying it today, you don't do it like your mum might do. If you wake up on a Sunday and say, I don't want to go and play football today. Say, well, you might be letting your teammates down. But it's your decision. There's none of that. It's you do it. That's it. There's no if, buts, or maybe. It's what you've done. You've trained 20 hours a week for the last 8 years, however many. Those hours add up and the time adds up, but there's the stress as well that comes with it. But you're treated like a professional athlete from those ages, and you feel like at times there's not an awful lot of choice for you in it.
So was that as an individual? Sorry, Alex, was that as an individual dancer, or was that with a partner?
Yeah, with a partner, like you see every Saturday night on Strictly Come Dancing.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a partner, and they work just as hard as you do. They have to put up with your rubbish when you don't feel like it. You have to put up with theirs. There's times where you really spur each other on, and there's times where you fight like an old married couple. It's an interesting environment. It's really interesting environment.
So I suppose the next question then is, what makes a good parent?
Again, you can only look at the environment that you're raised in yourself. My dad, being a professional athlete, he knew what it was like, but he wasn't the pushy one. He was always the one that just said, you got to you've got to enjoy this. You've got to give it your best. And if you give it your best, I don't care if you dance the worst I've ever seen you dance. If you turn around to me and say that that was the best you could do today, I'm going to be proud of you. I don't care what happens. My mum was a bit more direct about it. She's a Mancunian, born and bred. She's quite direct about things. It's
hey, that's the north. That's one thing I've found about living in the northwest. You know, if you don't like what they say, well, it's a highway into it.
Yeah, that's it. And I love my mum to pieces, and I love the honesty from my mum. But she's never been she never softened anything down or buttered anything up, whatever you want to say. It was, she'll tell you how it is. She treated me like an adult from a kid. Yeah. She always told me how it was. And that's just how it was. And I think the blend worked quite nicely. But I don't think it would have worked if my dad was the same and they were both like that. But it is what it is.
It's obviously done you some good stead, because you know we look at your coaching journey, we look at the quality and the caliber of the athletes that you've worked with in the past and what you're working with at the moment. I mean, tell us about your transition from an athlete into a strength and conditioning coach. I mean, how did you get into strength and conditioning, and sort of talk us through your journey through having your own facility to working with the famous Cleggs?
Oh, God, it all starts from the end of the dancing, really. So I gave up dancing when I was kind of 14, 15. When you always have like a career path out in front of you, I never thought about what to do after school, because I was always just going to be a professional dancer. That was nailed on. That was it was sorted. Yeah. And then I decided not to do that. I started playing football with some friends until I finished school. I took all my GCSEs. I didn't know what on earth I was going to do with myself. But I don't know if they still do it, but in the year 10 work experience, I went to a local leisure centre, and I was doing stuff like changing bins and sweeping toilets and whatever you name it, putting up badminton.
Best jobs.
Absolutely. Do you know what? All the terrible things, but I loved it. I didn't want to be sat behind a desk anymore. That's the one thing I did know. And I absolutely loved it. So I finished school, and luckily they offered me a position full-time, and due to my age, they got certain allowances. So it didn't really cost them anything for me to go and do all my qualifications in kind of level 1 sport. And it wasn't anything advanced, but it was tennis, handball, netball, basketball, rugby, football. But they paid for me to do all of that. And the area that I was raised in my teenage years is down in West Sussex, and it's a very sleepy area of West Sussex. And all the schools are tiny, and you don't have a full-time PE teacher. So the leisure centre I worked at, they also provided the coaches / PE teachers for all the schools. So I just used to, on my moped, be driving around with a bag full of balls and cones, and at 16 years old, just going to all these different schools, coaching all these different sports. And I loved it. I was 16 and I was being paid to just go and play sports all day long. And it was great. I absolutely loved it. After a couple of years though, I got to a point where maybe I was, I'm not quite sure, maybe I lost a bit of maturity, maybe I missed something, I'm not quite sure, but I really started getting into the gym, and I got my fitness instructor and my personal training qualification, really enjoyed doing it, and I really started enjoying working with adults. So when an adult's in there for an hour and a half gym session, and you've got their undivided attention, and you are explaining, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and it's great. But it was a dual role again, between half my time was spent with adults and half my time was spent with kids. Yeah. And maybe it's just my passions had slightly changed for a little moment in time. And I actually lost a bit of passion for coaching the kids, because I found of an hour of the session with the kids, 10, 15 minutes of it was, come on, you need to get changed quicker, you need to put your shoes on, we need to get outside. And you're looking at your watch thinking, this is an hour session. Yeah, by the time we've got out and they've got changed, we've only got 30 minutes. And so I gradually started stepping away from that and just started being full-time personal training. which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed that, and I feel like everything I've done in my career has helped me at certain stages. And due to the demographics of the area, I went and did a lot of kind of rehab and postural correction and lower back pain. And what I didn't realize at the time is now that's really coming into its own with all this functional movement screening. So that's been around a while. There's lots of discussions as to how much influence does the functional movement screening have. I think it's a great place to start, personally, because it's
underrated, isn't it? In my opinion, it's very, very underrated. And you know as well as I do, Alex, working with athletes day to day, there's always a problem. There's always an underlying problem. And you ask them about the training history, and there's always a biomechanical structure, and it's always hips, it's always knees, it's always ankles. But the athletes don't know about this. So, yeah. Spot on, mate. You're absolutely 100%.
I also find it's a massive trust builder. So, just slightly off topic, but when I went into Curzon Ashton and was the strength and conditioning coach with those guys in my time in Manchester, you're coming in halfway through the season. It's a bit tricky. The players all know each other. They know the physio. There's a whole load of trust there, and they've built that trust. You've got to come in as the new guy, and it takes a little bit of time. But it was only once I'd done the functional movement screening, and you speak to all the guys and say, have you got any injuries? Have you got this? Have you got that? No, all fine. Aces. It's like, cool. Okay. Then you start doing the functional movement screen. Then you come back to me and say, well, you've got an imbalance here. This isn't moving right. This is about. Let's address these things. Oh yeah, well, that happened because of this at the beginning of the season. I didn't realize that was still bugging me. And once you then have that trust, because like, well, actually, this guy, I did something before he even knew about it, and he's found it. So I found that as a really good trust builder, and all that thousands of hours I did putting that into. How should we say, weekend warrior athletes, your desk job guys that get out there and hit the road bike. I put in my 10,000 hours with those guys learning how to do this stuff. And I can do that. I don't mean to be arrogant about it, but when you've done it a million times, you can start pulling that information quickly. You don't have to start referring back to loads of like books or journals. Now I've got a young athlete in front of me. So, well, he's displaying the same thing as a 50-year-old guy did in a certain element, shall we say. And I've done it 1,000 times before. So
experience is huge. Experience is definitely huge. And, there's no arrogance about being experienced and having, because I know this is something that happens, Alice, a lot, especially within the S&C industry. Everyone sort of panics a little bit, don't they? If they're going to be questioned. So, well, how do you know that this has happened? Well, such a 2019 stated that this, but realistically, the best coaches are the ones that have got the experience of identifying it themselves, and that's all. And ultimately, that's what's going to set them in better stead than most.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we're jumping forward and backwards on timelines here, but my time worked with Mick Clegg. I mean, Mick Clegg spent 11, 12 years at United. I'm not going to disclose how old he is. He wouldn't be too happy about that. Well, but he's got bags of experience. I mean, he's got 50 years of coaching experience, and you can't buy that. You can't go on a course and get 50 years of coaching experience. You can't do it. So I think experience is huge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the experience. I mean, we look at, obviously we touched on Mick Clegg there, and obviously he's the main man that that Ronaldo. I think you look at people like Ronaldo, who literally credits him with transforming him at United. Roy Keane didn't speak. I mean, I spoke to his son Mick, who's currently at United at the moment, and he was saying that Roy Keane basically said that, because I think Roy had been to Olympic Gym at the time where he was in Ashton, and he was that impressed that he said he went back to Sir Alex and said, "Look, this guy knows his business. You've got to have a chat with him." I mean, what's your experiences in terms of working with Mick, and what sort of things did you take away from him?
My time working with Mick is an incredible experience. I can't put it any other, and every single day was an experience. Mick, he demands 110% with everything you do at every second of the day. It doesn't matter if you've been there 14 hours or it's a 7-year-old kid that, that's just starting out on their athletic development journey, or it's a professional footballer that's turning out for Manchester United every week, is 110% for every single athlete. There's not for 1 second can you take your eye off the ball, because that man has got eyes everywhere. He's got eyes more than you would believe. And if you took your eye off the ball for 1 second, he knew about it.
Wow.
And that was, yeah, it was incredible. There's times where you think, how do you even know this? But it was, that was an amazing experience. And it really teaches you to be striving to get better every day. And even when you think you've done a good job, and you think that was a really good session, really enjoyed that. Every single one of the athletes learned something, got better, left here with a smile, can't wait to come back. It wasn't a negative thing. He'd just say, really liked it. Did you think about this? What would have happened if you'd done this instead of that? And it's just learning all the time.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah. Being in that environment is, from my perspective, I much prefer being not fearful of the other coaches I'm with, but I always want to be on my toes when I'm in any sort of training environment, because that's when you're ultimately going to learn. Because the athletes that you work with will always say, "Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. This was great," but they're not. But I think when you're working with athletes, one thing I find, Alex, a lot is that they're not scared to give you negative feedback, but for the fear of you beasting them. But they almost they've got so much respect for you for helping them that they don't want to upset you, don't they? So it's surrounding yourself with the right people and having somebody to mentor you is, it's critical, isn't it, in terms of developing in any element, whether you're an athlete or a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's only once I knew I was learning. The whole time I was in Manchester, I knew I was learning. It was only once I stepped out of the environment. You can step back and take a little bit more of a broader view. Yeah. I only realized how much I'd learned once I'd taken a step back and gone, oh God, I learned way more than I even thought I did. The one thing, it's really important that you use the word mentor there, and that's what Mick was for me the whole time I was there. That's one thing I have been missing in Germany. I haven't quite built up that network yet, where I've got that older mentor that's got more experience than I have that I can learn from. But it's been a really important year for me in terms of learning something completely different. Yeah. Hence getting into the tactical and technical side. I've learned so much this year, not through kind of just having my head down and reading books or practicing things. It's that taking on a new element of something. I think at times we get stuck in our bubbles and say, he's the strength and conditioning coach, he's the football coach, or he's the swimming coach, or whatever it happens to be. And we all get put in our little blocks. Yeah. And I think I've now kind of jumped into a different box with the mind of an S&C coach. And it's been an interesting experience, and I've learned with every session.
Oh, I can imagine. Being in a different environment in a different country is obviously it's going to throw loads and loads of challenges. And we spoke upon the different age groups earlier on in terms of how they're going to respond to you in terms of the communication element. How important is it in terms of in terms of demonstrations when you're actually trying to get the most out of the athletes? You're finding being abroad that you're having to do more demonstrations as opposed to just giving an instruction as you may do it in the UK, or?
I think it's actually really helpful for me. There's times where in the past, as a younger coach, you're looking for that perfect cue, and every athlete, it resonates differently to them. So what someone tells me, they could say the exact same thing to you, and your brain thinks of it differently. So I think sometimes I've been guilty of using too many words, too many cues, yet in a different language where my vocabulary is obviously limited, it forces you to really nail down what it is you're trying to express.
Yeah.
Instead of using 50 words, I've only got 8 to use now. So I've really got to try and nail down. So what is it that I'm trying to get them to do? And how do I get that? So if I'm trying to get them to jump further, obviously you give them a demonstration, but that's useless. They need something that's going to internally trigger them. So I've actually found it's probably helped my coaching more than anything, because I've got to be more direct. You can't faff around with this and that and try this, try that. You've got to be, this is it. This is what we've got to do. So it's probably simplified it as that whole Chinese philosophy: one step back to take 2 steps forward. Take away some of the extra that I didn't need. It stripped it back, and it's helped me get the result that I wanted faster, maybe. Obviously, I've got no test to kind of apply that against, because I'm doing a different role in a different country. So it's not directly relative, but I feel that it's helped me in that respect.
No, that's really, really, really interesting. And, you know, every situation is obviously unique and different, you know, in different environments and everything like that, which is where, touching upon the testing element, then of course there's no testing element at the moment. I suppose when you're coaching in season, there's not going to be a massive amount of testing, is there really, during season? And I suppose that would just be limited to what, maybe twice in that season, at the beginning, at the end, would you say?
So I took with it being my first tactical and technical role, I'll go into more detail with the rugby, because it's a little bit more similar to what we know, being chaos athletes ourselves. You're interested more in football, obviously used to having players on the pitch as opposed to the individualist of the track and field. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, but
definitely. With the rugby, I came into a position, I was probably the nicest position I will ever walk into in my life. It's a dream position, in the fact that they just lost a coach. I went there as a player. I was just going to play rugby. When you move here, I had a very small group of friends that I knew through my partner, hence why I'm here. And she was really supportive throughout the whole thing. And she said, you've got to make some friends that are away from our friend group. You've got to get involved, try and play some rugby, do something for you, because you need to be able to find out if you can live here. Best advice ever. Most supportive thing she could have done. It's brilliant. So I found a local rugby club, and it just happened to be Eintracht. So I was like, all right, I'll go and play. Went to a couple of sessions, and it was in the very summer, so they were just doing some touch along with another club. And there was a couple of the guys that played for the 15s, the rugby union side, and they just said, look, you haven't got a job at the moment. We're looking for a coach. You have coaching experience. It's not exactly the same, but are you interested? I can put you in touch with someone that can have a chat. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. You know, you think, well, I was going to play here anyway. I've got to be stupid if I don't at least have the conversation. So I had the conversation with the guy, and he was very honest, which I like, because I'm very honest. I'm not going to hide anything. I think is a two-way street. Let's be honest. Let's be open. And they had a small kind of nucleus of players that all joined together. They played together for 10 or 15 years. We're all in and around the same age, and just got to that stage where they were all retiring. So the club went from having 30 strong, good players down to 12 in a couple of years. Just a real... It happens, you know, they don't have that transition of that youth system coming in to continually feed into it. So he just explained to me, this is the situation. We've got a good setup of the club here, but we don't know if we've got the players to sustain it. So he basically said, you've got a blank canvas to do whatever the hell you like with it.
Nice.
Which is probably an opportunity that I will have once in my life, and I loved it. I don't think I'm ever going to get to a situation where I've got that again.
Sounds perfect, that.
And it was. And I started, and with the bit of excitement, we've got a new coach. He's from the UK. He's played a decent level. There was a few kind of guys that were on the fringes that had played a bit but never really committed. A few guys came in. I think the first session we had 12, 13 guys. And my whole thing was just, I don't know how many numbers we're going to get. I don't know what the level is. Let's just have some fun.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just play, have some fun. And I did it all with a strength conditioning head on. So I used my specific warm-up protocols that I then, you know, introduced some rugby specific work with it, some S&C work that directly translates. I built it through that, because I didn't. I didn't have any real history of developing a tactical and technical plan. So, I mean, obviously put in some research, but I wanted to have my own thing. I had, like I say, a blank canvas, so I could do what I wanted. So I thought I'd just experiment. And my main thing was just starting to build some fun. And then within a month, the numbers just started growing. And we 12, 16, 18, 22 players that had fallen out with other people and said, I'm never going to play for this club again. All of a sudden we're back and we're loving it. And probably got about 35, 40 players. I mean, you know what it's like, commitment at this level. Some come in, some come out, but there's 35, 40 guys that's not alien to see at training. Now, we train twice a week. On average, pre-corona, we're looking at about 25. But I think that's 60, 65, 70% of most players at training. I'll take that at this kind of level. And it really developed. So it developed in the first kind of month to just being fun. To then I thought, right, well, I'm going to start really building a culture here so that people know that we're a completely different team. We're a new team, effectively.
Yeah.
We might be flying under an old flag. We might be flying under an old banner. We might have old colors. But we're a new club. We've got a new coach that's got completely new ideas. And I purposely kept myself to myself with the coaching in the beginning. I didn't ask the old coaches what they did before because I didn't want to be sucked into doing something similar.
You don't want that guilt.
This is not an arrogance thing. Yeah, this is not an arrogance thing. This was just I want to go my own way. And if I make a mistake, I'll learn from it.
Yeah.
And like you make mistakes. You do make mistakes, but you also learn stuff as well from these sometimes. And it just grew. So then I decided to put into a 4-season, because our season's broken up. It's really nice here, and it's as I think maybe the UK should do it, and there's been a lot of calls for it in the Premier League of having this winter break. But we have a winter break in our rugby here, and I actually really like it. And before I'd never really thought of, because I'd never been in it, I never realised the benefits of it. Having played I've played over 10, 12 seasons in the UK, where the season starts in July, and you get hammered for 6-8 weeks in training. It's just pre-season. You are getting killed. And then you get in and you play a game almost every weekend, unless you get buys or cups and you get knocked out or whatever. But you're playing most weekends until March, middle of March. And then by the time you get to the end of the season, your body's battered, you're mentally battered, and you don't want to see a rugby ball for 2 or 3 months. Exactly. Where here, you come into pre-season, and then you've got a month, 6 weeks of pre-season. Then you have a short season of 2.5, 3 months. And then it goes again. You have an off season for a month, then it builds up. So it's all counted as the same season, but it's just you have I'd love to be able to say the German version, but they call it the entry part of the season and the back part of the season. So the league is always one home, one away. And it's been messed up because of Corona, like I said, but I decided to break it into like a cycle of, call them 4 seasons, because there was an off season, a pre-season with the winter break. So I decided to put this 4 seasons together. And the first season, and I stole it from a huge influence of mine, but Vern Gambetta, who's got a book on athletic development, which I advise anyone to read if they're interested in coaching, or listen to his podcast. His Gaincast. I'm not a member, I'm not on his commission or anything, but I advise it to anyone.
Endorses him, doesn't it? I think everyone endorses him, Alex, to be fair. I know Brendan Chaplin talks a lot about Vern's work and that, and how good he is in that. He's easy to listen to. He's a funny guy. He's a likable guy. He'll tell you the mistakes he made before he'll tell you how great he is. I like a bit of humility like that. And but he's nice to listen to. He's easy to digest. And he talks nice and simply. But I followed his thing. I wanted the first season. It's called Everything Fundamentals, with an emphasis on fun. And I tried to really just break everything down. Like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. This is the philosophy that I had, and how I wanted us to try and play this game. So from a tactical and technical side of it, it was all new to me. But having experience, being an experienced player, I like a possession style of play.
I like us to keep hold of the ball. The other team can't score if we have the ball. That's my whole thinking.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's just, we used simple plays to get territory up the pitch, or simple ways to suck players in and then get the ball out wide. We don't need to talk about that as such, but the first season was just fundamentals, just develop a way of playing so that every single player on our team knew, when this is called, this is what we do. When that's called, that's what we do. And it went quite well. I liked how we played, but there was times where, because I put such an emphasis on possession, we didn't take as many risks as I would like.
So it's always that learning, isn't it? It's identifying the learning areas, and then all of a sudden, the next pre-season, right? Well, this didn't work in period one, in season one. Now we're in season two. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use it, right?
And that's it. That's exactly, you hit the nail on the head there. So I kind of likened it to, I can't remember what season it was. But there was a season with Arsenal, maybe 2010, where they keep the ball for 10 minutes without the other team even touching it, but they never got a shot away. So I likened that to what we were doing. I'm sure lots of Arsenal fans would completely disagree, but there was a time where I thought they kind of walked it in and they could have taken 10 shots before they even took one. But I coached my team to do the same. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's what we did. We were so safe on our possession that sometimes there was one game where we played one of the top teams in the league, and we battered them. We absolutely battered them everywhere on the pitch, apart from the scoreboard.
Oh, no way!
The scoreboard was the only place we didn't batter them, and we lost the game by 2 points. They scored a breakaway try with 5 minutes to go, but we spent 30 minutes in their half. We spent 30 minutes in their half with possession, in good places, with good chances.
Yeah.
And we lost by 2 points. And
that's got to be so frustrating.
It was. Because we played so well. We played so well. They did everything. The problem is they did everything I asked them to do.
Yeah, and this is the key thing, isn't it?
They executed it perfectly. We didn't quite finish off our chances, and we just weren't cutthroat enough. We were too nice about it. That's when I had to have a bit of self-reflection, say, how the hell did we lose that game? And I came to the conclusion that it was, I've told them not to take too many risks, and maybe sometimes you've got to take some risks. So that was season one. I learned from that. So season two comes around, and we had the opportunity in the winter to go to a gym where we did 6 weeks of 2 sessions a week in it's a big CrossFit box. Now, some people love CrossFit, some people are not in CrossFit. I'm not here to give my opinion on CrossFit. That's not what I'm here to do. But we trained in a CrossFit facility, and the facilities are great because there's bars, there's space, there's balls, there's kettlebell. They've got everything I could possibly dream of having in there, apart from maybe some hurdles. But it was great, and we did some testing. So we did some basic testing, and I mean, it wasn't to test at the beginning of the 6 weeks and then test at the end, because I think you lose 2 weeks doing that. It was basically just see how these guys move. We did a really simple test we did a standing broad jump, and we did a deadlift and a bench. Okay, there are 3, and they're really simple things, but I just wanted to see the power, the jump, the strength in a deadlift, and obviously the strength for an upper body, because you've got to have some kind of upper body strength in rugby, because it's in the hips, and they love that. And you've got to, at that level, you've also got to have a load of an element of athlete buy-in. Now, once they've done their bench, and I'd rather have them do a bit of benching, even though I don't particularly think it's the best thing we could be doing. Then
it's that competition, isn't it?
So there's got to be a bit of give and take. So we did that, and I also had them do a MAS test at the beginning of the 6 weeks. So I tried to emulate the running, so that they didn't just do strength work, and then as soon as we got onto the pitch, then pick up stupid injuries where they've done nothing but lift weights and jump and do that work, and then get out and do some running and pick up an injury. So I thought, right, we'll have this 6 weeks, and we'll have 2 gym sessions, 2 running sessions a week. And everything was planned out. Every single running plan was to the meter to each and every player. So I had them do a 5-minute MAS test, screenshot it on Adidas Run or Strava, whatever app they happen to use, screenshot the test, send it over to me. And then I worked out their meters per second, and I gave them a running program off that for 6 weeks. And they had to, just to get the buy-in, at the end of the session, they had to do a stupid selfie with them covered in sweat and send it into the group just to, again, it's building that culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that, I know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Do I know that the other winger's doing it? Do I know that the flanker's doing it?
Yeah.
And it's to make sure that we spurred each other on, or, you know, and it's a club environment with a group of guys. And
you've got to have a bit of banter, haven't you? You've got to have the banter.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to get the group morale up. And
yeah. So I put a stupid picture up and, you know, so-and-so comments, oh, you look knackered. It's like, well, I haven't seen you put up a picture for 5 days. If you've got to do both of your runs this week, you know. And
all about it, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it just, you know, it's like, it's a club environment. There's banter thrown around. But it just kept everyone on it. We had 6 weeks, and I did stupid things. I banged on about the culture, and I started building the culture secretly, and just there's certain things that were acceptable. I laid it out quite direct, and I like to believe I'm approachable in any situation, but there's certain things that I will not stand for. And one of them is being late. Now, I make it perfectly clear that being late is not acceptable. However, at this level, things come up. Yeah. But once I see you, I need to see that if you're late, you're in a rush to get on this pitch. If you walk through the gates and you slowly walk to the changing rooms, I'm going to hammer you in front of everyone else. Yeah. Even if you've walked slowly up the street, when you come through the gate, I need to see you running. Yeah. Because it's not just my time, it's the rest of the team as well.
So, well, this is it. It's going to impact how the other guys perform, isn't it? Because they're going to look at it and think, well, if he's going to get away with it, or if he can't be asked, then why should I be asked? And I'm totally behind what you're saying with that, because if they're late, then and they can't be bothered to make up the time, then they don't deserve to be there. They don't deserve your time or the time of the other guys.
And that's it. I mean, we only had a couple of occasions, but you only need to lay that law down once or twice, and then everyone knows, and that's it. And there's no. And then the serial offenders, we had a press up per minute rule. So if they're 10 minutes late, they have to do 10 press ups. But we all did it as a team, and you know, and there's 99% of the guys there on time. And it suddenly gets people thinking, you know, and if you only do that twice, 3 times, and it doesn't happen again. I'm not here to say I'm not a drill sergeant. I'm not that kind of guy. But there's certain things when you're trying to build a culture of a team.
This is it. It's boundaries. Yeah. It's the boundaries. But at the same time, within a rugby environment, of course, if they do press ups, they're still going to be developing their upper body. So it's going to be having a benefit, isn't it? But,
yeah, that's it. And what goes hand in hand with, you know, I don't want to use the word punishment, but there's got to be some kind of payment for lateness, or one of the things that I say. But then what goes hand in that is we have a fun thing. So any new player that comes in, at the end of his first training session, he's got a little bit of an initiation. It's only a jokey thing. Yeah. Never any harm. It's always fun, because I think some of these places go too far, but it always just brings a smile to everyone's face. I think that's what you've got to importantly play as well. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people are giving up their free time. You're asking them to work really hard. It's got to be fun for them as well.
Yeah. That sounds really good. Well, Alex, it's been absolutely brilliant getting an insight to what's been a really, really fantastic journey. So I certainly didn't know that you did your dancing years ago. So that was really interesting and really intriguing to hear about that. And then, of course, you know, when you're talking about the transition from being in the UK to now what you're doing over there in Freiburg at the minute, I think it's been absolutely brilliant. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm sure the guys have got loads of take home from it. So for those guys that are wanting to connect with you, find out a bit more about you, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, and my if you search for alex.w.ryan, you'll find me on there. I've got to admit, I'm not a huge social media person. I've only really been getting into it in the last year or so, so it's a bit sporadic. When I was at Mix, I had stuff going up a bit more frequently, but you can find me on there, or my email address is alex@sd for South Downs, so sd-performance.co.uk.
Absolutely brilliant. So guys, get in touch with him. Have a look at some of his videos, because the videos Alex has got on there are absolutely brilliant. So definitely have a look on there. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really do appreciate your time this afternoon, buddy.
Thanks for having me on.
I wish you all the best, and I look forward to speaking soon.
Excellent. Take care, Chris.